everyone, how are you doing? I hope that you are doing so very well. Another month has ended and another month is upon us, and you know what that means. Wrap-ups and TBRs. This video is probably gonna get a little bit long because I read 17 books this month. What? Who even am I? What even is life? I don't really know how I did that besides abandoning a lot of responsibility and things I probably should have been doing. I also borrowed a lot of these books from the library or read them on my Kindle, so there's gonna be a lot of this cover right here action going on throughout this video. So let's get started because we got a lot of ground to cover. The first book that I read this month was The Queen of the Tearling by Erica Johansson. This is the Booksplosion book of the month, and I actually wasn't planning on reading this with everybody else because I didn't think that I had it, but I brought my Kindle with me to Disney World and I was just scrolling through my books and lo and behold, Queen of the Tearling was there. Overall, I really enjoyed Queen of the Tearling. I really liked Kelsey as a character. She was super strong and super BA and just really great. However, it had a lot of world building problems for me. There was something about it, either the writing or the describing, that the world just didn't really make sense to me. It wasn't something that I could picture whenever the author was describing it. It was really hard to visualize anything in that world. Even though there was descriptions of it, it just didn't really click. There's also some magical elements that weren't really explained. I understand leaving mystery, I understand leaving questions unanswered so you can answer them in later books in the series, but you kind of need a base foundation that's pretty solid, pretty good, and that kind of wasn't there for this book. The plot was really fun and it was really interesting to read and really engrossing and engaging. I sped through this so quickly because it was so intense and so crazy, but the world building just wasn't right there for me. I gave this book a 3 out of 5 stars, just kind of middle of the road there. I'm interested to see where the series goes, but I'm not dying to read the rest of the books. The next book that I read was Fairest by Marissa Meyer. This book was not that great. First of all, Levana is just not really a great villain. There are some villains that I really enjoy in series. I really enjoy the Mayor in the Chaos Walking trilogy. He's probably the best villain that I've ever read. He's so complex and so interesting, but Levana is not really a great villain. She's pretty typical and her backstory just kind of adds to that. I mean, you kind of feel sorry for her a little bit, but it doesn't make her a better person at all. At her core, she's still pretty terrible and she does a lot of really terrible stuff in this book. She's not really great as a character. She's not really super well developed. I know this book was kind of meant to develop her a little bit more, but for me it didn't even do that. I am a sucker for a backstory though, and seeing some of the pieces of the Lunar Chronicles come together, and there's pretty cool things in the books that you hear about and you kind of see those scattered throughout this book, so that's really cool. I really liked Everett as a character, but beyond that, I was really disappointed in Fairest, unfortunately. I gave this book a 2 out of 5 stars. There were a couple redeeming points, so it wasn't a 1 star, but it definitely was not great at all. The next book that I read, or rather listened to, was The $1,000 Tan Line by Rob Thomas. I was gifted this book from Lindsay Ray through the Audible One Book program, so thank you, Lindsay, so much for that. Honestly, this was really, really great for me. I loved this book. This book is a continuation of the Veronica Mars series. If you haven't seen the TV show, definitely go watch it. It's one of my all-time favorite TV shows. Right after that, watch the movie, and then right after that, you can read the book. The book picks up where the movie leaves off and really shows Veronica in her private investigator role. Kristen Bell actually narrates this book, so it's kind of like watching an extended Veronica Mars episode, but listening to it. I just loved it so much. Definitely don't read it unless you've watched Veronica Mars because it won't make a lot of sense to you. There's a lot of references and a lot of people that pop up that don't make sense unless you've seen the show and the movie, but if you are a fan of Veronica Mars, I would highly recommend this book and the next book. They're just phenomenal and so great. I give this a 5 out of 5 stars. Yeah! The next book that I read was A Darker Shade of Magic by B.E. Schwab. Let's just take a moment to appreciate this cover because it's beautiful. This book was alright for me. I enjoyed the characters and I loved Victoria Schwab's writing. The characters were pretty interesting. They were fun to read about, but the story and the world building was kind of like, The world building was not really spectacular. Honestly, there could have been so much more done with it and it could have been so much bigger, but it wasn't. The story was hard to get into at the very beginning, but once we got towards the end, it was really exciting and really fast paced, except for a lot of things didn't really get explained and were really confusing. Besides that, the story was really good. It's a solid fantasy book, but it's definitely not the best fantasy book I've ever read. But honestly, I think that the series in later books will kind of gain its momentum and gain its legs and get better from here. I gave this book a 3.5 out of 5 stars. The next book that I read was Me, Earl, and the Dying Girl by Jessie Andrews. What motivated me to read this book was watching the trailer for the movie, which I know is going to be super great and super phenomenal. The book was a lot better than I was expecting it to be. It was so funny. It made me laugh out loud at multiple points. His writing of these characters was just hilarious and perfect and great. The story was a lot different than a lot of YA cancer books that I've read, because a lot of YA cancer books tend to follow the same arc, the same path, Fault in Our Stars type of books, but this was not that, which is something that I really loved. It was really about like the mediocrity of cancer rather than being some big epic love story or epic battle story. It was just the story of a life, which was really refreshing in my opinion. That's probably what I love the most about it, how non-typical it was. I gave this book a 4 out of 5 stars. The next book that I read was The Summer I Turned Pretty by Jenny Han. This is actually a collection of all 3 books that my friend Laura let me borrow 5 months ago. Sorry, Laura. But after Me, Earl, and the Dying Girl, I wanted to stay in the contemporary genre, but I wanted something a little bit lighter, something, you know, romancy. So I went to The Summer I Turned Pretty. I read this book so ridiculously fast, and overall I really enjoyed it. It was exactly what I was looking for, which is a contemporary romance, but it has a lot of deeper issues that it deals with. I liked the characters overall. Belly could be a little bit bratty at times. Conrad was obnoxious. I loved Jeremiah. So the characters were really well written, and I mean, it's a beach house summer romance story. So just put in your mind what you think that is, and that's exactly what this book is. The plot moved along really well, so you were like hooked and wanted to keep reading and reading, and you couldn't put it down. I gave this book a 3.5 out of 5 stars. Next, I read The Raven Boys by MAGGIE STIEFVATER. Oh my gosh, this series. I cannot tell you how much I love the series, and specifically The Raven Boys. That was the best one of the 3 so far for me, and it blew my mind with how good it was. I read this book with a few friends, Zoe from Read by Zoe, Raylene from Patterson Prong 07, and Max from Old Dumb Books was kind of rereading it with us a little bit. They talked about reading it, and so I was like, I'll join in and we can make it a read along, and that's what finally pushed me to read this book, and I am so glad that I did. All of the characters are really great, and it's just a phenomenal read overall. I actually did a full review on it. The first part of it is spoiler free, so you don't have to worry about going in and getting spoiled. So if you want to check that out, you can click here and go watch it. Do I even have to say it? I gave this book a 5 out of 5 stars. Next up, no surprise, read The Dream Thieves by MAGGIE STIEFVATER. Just had to continue on with the series, just had to keep going, keep pushing, keep moving. I didn't like The Dream Thieves as much as I liked The Raven Boys. It was still really great and explored the characters a lot more fully and kind of more in depth, which was really great. Can't really say a lot more about it because spoilers. If you haven't read The Raven Boys, I don't want to spoil it for you. I gave this book a 4.5 out of 5 stars. Next up, I read The Ocean at the End of the Lane by Neil Gaiman. This is my copy that I bought a while ago, and it is autographed. Look at it, autographed. To be honest, at first, I wasn't super into this book. I was like, alright, cool, it's a story about this kid and his friend. But then we got a little bit more into the magical realism and that part of it, and it just became so whimsical and so beautiful, and by the end I was like, this book moved me. It's just really overall wonderful. It was the perfect length, but I also wish it was longer because then there would be more story and more things to tell. Oh, just thinking about this book makes me love it even more. Just read it, guys. It's not that long. You can do it. I gave this book a 4 out of 5 stars. The next book that I read was Blue Lily Lily Blue by MAGGIE STIEFVATER. Gotta read that 3rd book of the Raven Cycle, yeah! Another book that I really enjoyed. There's a lot more tensions and a lot more things happening that are just like coming together, and oh my gosh, so many things. This book was also mind-blowing and also great. All 3 of them were just phenomenal and blew me out of the water. Just more adventures and more things with Gainsey, Blue, Ronan, Adam, Noah, yeah! Fab 5 right there. I'm just ready for the next book, and I'm really sad that it got pushed back. Cry, tears. Gave this book a 5 out of 5 stars though, hey ho. The next book that I read was The Screwtape Letters by C.S. Lewis. I read this for a read along with a few booktubers. I'll put all their information down below, and our live show, because we did a live show talking about this and you can go check it out. This was a reread for me, and it was still just as good as the first time I read it. The whole devil's advocate thing is really eye-opening as a Christian, and if you are a Christian, I would definitely recommend you read it because it is phenomenal. well, and it will definitely challenge you in a lot of ways you never thought you'd be challenged. Also, when I was reading this, I went back and forth between reading and listening to the John Cleese audiobook, and I would highly recommend the audiobook. It was so good. John Cleese is just phenomenal. I gave this book a 4 out of 5 stars. The next 4 books I read during Dewey's 24-hour readathon, which is exactly what it sounds like. You read as many books as you can in 24 hours. The first 2 books I read were It's Not Summer Without You and We'll Always Have Summer by Jenny Han. These 2 books, solid middle and end to this trilogy. They delve into a lot deeper issues, and there's a lot more tension and a lot more interesting things that happen in these 2 books, and I just loved them. In the second book, Belly was a lot more bratty and obnoxious, and she got slightly better in the third book, but she still is not really my favorite female lead. But Jeremiah and Conrad, man, I just love them so much. They're so great. Another one of those, can't really say much else about these books because spoilers, but they were pretty great. I gave both these books a 3.5 out of 5 stars. The next book that I read was The Fangirl's Guide to the Galaxy by Sam Maggs, and oh my gosh, this book. I want to buy this book for everybody. It explains so much of who I am and why I am the way I am. There's information about different conferences, there's a whole chapter on feminism, there's different types of girly geeks, there's stuff about cosplay. All of the things that you would think are in The Fangirl's Guide to the Galaxy, they are all in here. It's so beautiful. I showed it off in my book haul. Still beautiful. Please go buy this book. Please go read this book. I'm not saying that just because I was sent it by Quirk Books, but because I actually super loved this book. It was one of my favorite books I've ever read. I gave this a 5 out of 5 stars. Do you even have to ask? And the last book that I read on that Saturday was How I Live Now by Meg Rosoff. The writing style was a little bit hard to get into at first because it's written kind of in stream of consciousness and you're like, what's going on? There's no clear dialogue breaks and you kind of just have to feel your way out. But once you get into the story, it's so good. Daisy's whole journey with her cousins is really crazy and really out there, but it kind of makes you think, what if a war came? What would you do? What would happen? Would it be like this or would it be something different for you? It's just really great. All the characters in this were just phenomenal, but their journey is so rough and so hard and you really feel for them throughout this book. I gave this book a 4 out of 5 stars. The next book that I listened to was Mr. Kiss and Tell by Rob Thomas. This is the second book in the Veronica Mars series and it was even better than the first one. It was really sad not having Kristen Bell narrate, but the story made up for it. It was so great and I can see the series really starting to get on its feet and really get moving. Even though I love the first book so much, this one was even better and I can't wait to see where it goes. Mystery TV shows are my jam and now I'm gonna start reading a lot more mystery books because I have loved these so much. I gave this book a 5 out of 5 stars. The last book that I read this month was To Kill a Mockingbird by Harper Lee for #ReadTKAM. Guys, I haven't read this book since high school, I think, and I fell in love with the story all over again. It's just so great and so wonderful. There's so many issues and things that this book deals with, and it does it beautifully. There's a lot of times where I caught myself reading it or listening to it because I listened to the audiobook for a little bit, and I would read or listen to a line and think about how brilliantly that was written and how beautifully it was written. Her metaphors and just her writing in general is really great in this book. It's definitely a world where you're like all in and super invested and you can visualize and picture everything, and this book is just so great. It's definitely going to be one of my all-time favorites for as long as I live. I gave this book a 5 out of 5 stars. Whew, that's it. We did it, guys. We got through all of those books that I read this past month. Man, that was a lot. How did I do that? I don't even know. Now we're going to my TBR, which is only 3 books long, keeping it short for this video and also because I don't really know what else I want to read this month. So just gotta leave my options open. The first 2 books I've got here, I think y'all already know what they're gonna be. There's Inferno by Dante and In the Light of What We Know by Zia Hader Rahman. Books that were on my last month's TBR, and despite reading 17 books, didn't read these. I actually started Inferno, as you can probably see right there, but I thought that I wasn't gonna get it done by the end of the month and therefore I wouldn't have fulfilled my read a classic a month. So I switched over to Kill a Mockingbird so I could do that. But so far, loving Inferno. Can't wait to read the rest of it this month. And In the Light of What We Know, this is the time for me to read this book, I believe. And then the next book that I'm gonna read is Every Day by David Leviathan. I was watching my friend David, aka Lit Journal's video, and he was saying he was gonna read this month, and and that Time had put it on its top 100 influential books in this century or something like that. It's been sitting on my TBR shelf for forever, so I was like, hey, let me know, I'll read it with you, and then we kind of got a read-along going. So we're gonna be reading every day from May 4th to May 11th if you would like to join us on that journey. This is about a person named A who wakes up in a different body every single day. Could be a boy, could be a girl, could be anybody. He's just somebody different every single day. Then he ends up in the body of this guy and meets this guy's girlfriend. He's like, oh, I like you a lot, and he kind of breaks his rules to kind of go out of his way to find her every single day. Or at least that's what I think it's about. The fact that it was on that top 100 influential books list is really motivating me to read this, so I'm really interested to see if I will actually like it or not. But either way, I'll be reading it with friends, so it'll be fun. Join us, hashtag Everydayalong, yeah. And that's it. Thanks for joining me on that marathon, guys, because that was craziness. That was a crazy reading month for me. Let me know down below what your favorite book you read this past month was, or what you're most looking forward to reading this month. Thank you so much for watching this video, and I'll see you next time. Bye. Goodreads, you're my best friend. And it's, oh my gosh. Goodreads, you're failing me. You're failing me hard. The next book, Maureen not doing her research beforehand. I did it. That was the longest video ever. Yeah.